What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Gridiron Uncensored. After a little break in the holiday weekend, we hope you all had a great 4th of July celebrating America's independence. Now we're going to get into the SEC conference, and we're starting to wrap up these season previews. This is it, the final teams, and then we're going to get into conference projections and stuff like that. So tonight we got Alabama, Arkansas, and Auburn on this episode, and we're going to start off with Alabama. Uh, Obviously, 2023 was a great season. I know it started a little shaky with the quarterback situation, but they figured it out. Milroe was his chaotic self, and he got them to the playoffs. Didn't necessarily end the way they want to, but then it was the big story after Nick Saban left, bunch of players left. Then they hired DeBoer from Washington. It was a crazy offseason, but there's a lot of hope, a lot of potential still on this team. They're loaded with talent, and they got some good portal players too. So we're going to cover all that here very briefly. Trevor, I know coaching changes, big time changes down there in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, there's a ton. There's a ton.
The main
Cause
ones.
for I feel like some optimism. I'm not. I think that they had to settle for their offensive coordinator, but we will see how that all kind of shakes out. The new offensive coordinator is Nick Sheridan, who was last year's Washington's tight end coach. Obviously, their original pick is now in the NFL. The person that was initially hired for the offensive coordinator job is now working with a former Michigan head coach over there in the good old NFL. So that's a good one. But I love the pickup for Bama and at the defensive coordinator, inside linebacker coach, Kane Womack, who was previously South Alabama's head coach. I think he's going to do wonders. I don't think he would have been picked for this if he wasn't significantly qualified for it. Mm-hmm. I know South Alabama has had some decent teams as of late. Everything else is kind of the offensive line coach was more of a lateral thing for him. Chris Kappa, man, I picked the ones. I always pick the ones that are the hardest. Whatever, you know what? It's whatever. It's Chris K. Kapilovic. He's the former Baylor offensive line coach. He comes in, and then they did retain Robert Gillespie at the running backs coach position. He was last year's Alabama running backs coach. So that's pretty much kind of that's a quick rundown. It's not everybody that's coming in, but that's just a quick rundown of some of the main position pieces, along with the offensive and defensive coordinator.
Yeah, I agree. And, obviously a lot of changes with any coaching staff. There's going to be a lot of turnover. But I agree that the defensive coordinator, I think that's a really good get. Nick Sheridan, we'll see. Obviously, former Michigan quarterback, right? Back in the day under Rich Rod. So curious, to see how that goes. Let's talk portal real quick, just because we're kind of in this changes phase. So many portal guys left, but they got a lot of really good ones in. They finished with a third class. 15 came in, 40 left. So I mean, I know, they had a great class, but you still have to look at the portal losses too, and that's a lot of depth guys and starters too. So that's one concern for me there. But they also brought in a lot of really good guys, looking like guys from Overton, Demai Jackson, Keon Sapp from Michigan, which one that I thought was going to be a standout player for Michigan this season. So they got him, which is wonderful, because they lost some guys in the defensive back position, linemen, stuff like that. So, Blake, I'm curious what your thoughts are on this Alabama team, the losses that they had on the portal, but also who they got in, because they got a lot of quality players, starters too.
Yeah, well, being a Bama fan, immediately I start trying to find reasons to dismiss those players. So, Caleb Downs, obviously, it's a big loss because he was a starter as a true freshman there. But he had his issues throughout the season. I mean, he got burned in the Michigan game. He got burned a couple of times throughout the season. And, I mean, we're loaded with talent in Tuscaloosa. You can literally plug and play. I know it don't always work out to where they're equally as good as the player they're replacing.
Mhm.
But I really like some of the players we got out of the portal. I've got two on here. I think Jeremy Bernard is really going to help on the offense. He's familiar with the system. And then Keon Sabb, obviously, on the
Yeah.
defensive side. I think he's going to probably be one of the starters. And Damani Jackson also. I think he's gonna be a day one starter too if they all stay healthy for the most part.
Sure.
But running over as far as Nick Sheridan taking over at offensive coordinator, I don't think he's going to be so much in charge of the offense as much as it's going to be DeBoer making a lot of the play calls. And I think if Ryan Grubb had been there, he would have been the play caller. But going back through DeBoer's career, he's the offensive-minded guy, just like Saban was the defensive-minded guy. The calls, even though the coordinator's making the decision, Saban's making the final decision on the field, just like I think DeBoer is going to be making the offensive play calls on the field. I don't know how active Sheridan will actually be as a play caller, if you get what I'm saying.
Sure.
I do like the change defensively. Moving to his 4-2-5, he's a very aggressive defensive coach. He likes to go after the quarterback, which would be nice to see from Saban, who just had pass rush packages that he would bring in situational areas throughout the game. It'll be nice to see some of our linemen actually get after the quarterback instead of just swimming the line of scrimmage all the time. So I'm looking forward to that. And then just some key players I've got returning. We got Jahad Campbell, Deontay Lawson, Malachi Moore defensively. I think all three of those are, just breakout season top players. And then offensively, Elrow, if he can get more accurate down the field, I think he'll be a lethal quarterback. And I think under DeBoer, it's really going to help him develop this season. Last year, he just never satisfied me with his accuracy down the field. If he had time to sit in the pocket, he had his moments, but most of the time he was running for his life. But I don't know how much of that was our offensive line being that bad or him trying to extend a play or make a play. So we'll really see what was the issue last year, this year. Justice Haynes, everybody's excited to see him. But another name people need to watch is Jam Miller at running back. I've got two key players to watch this season, offensive and defensive. I've got Jam Miller as the running back. Everybody needs to watch him. I think he's going to be fantastic this year. And then our nose guard, Jaheim Otis, the dude's an absolute unit. He lost 100 pounds to come down, started as a freshman. He is an absolute monster, and I think he's going to have a breakout year.
Awesome. Hey, thank you for the insight. I'm excited to see what this team really does. And Trevor, we'll get your takes on it too. But again, it's just the losses that always concern me a little bit for depth. But like you said, they recruit so well. They've got so much talent. It's kind of plug and play. The biggest ones that I saw, that they lost the wide receiver position. And then I think the line, I'm a little curious how that one's going to fold out on offense. But defense, I think they're going to be just fine under the new DC. Trev, what are your thoughts on Alabama?
Yeah, I think one of the losses that might be undersold a little bit is the loss of Julian Sayin at the quarterback position, giving them a little bit more depth at the quarterback position. Because I do think Julian Sayin, if given one more year with DeBoer, would end up taking the starting role just because of what I have seen from him in this offseason while he's been at Ohio State. I think that DeBoer would have done wonders for him. And I don't think Ohio State's going to be his final resting place, but I could be wrong. And also, I think that most Bama fans should be ridiculously excited. They have a lot of good wide receivers, but none more than the freshman that's coming in Ryan Williams, who is the 8th best player in the country, third at his position. So this year's wide receiving group in general is very highly thought of. And I think Ryan Williams is going to make an impact. How big of an impact? I'm not sure, but I guarantee you will see Ryan Williams on the field more than likely a few times this season.
Yeah, it's going to have to be, honestly. After losing, some guys, especially like Isaiah Bond, stuff like that. But this guy's super talented. You're expecting him to come in and step up, but it is tough for freshmen to always, overperform too. So we'll see what happens. But I think he's going to have a hell of a season. There's another. I think we talked about one for Ohio State who we're expecting to have a big season at wide receiver position. We're going to talk about one at Auburn too. But yeah, I like this Bama team. Guys, anything else about them before we move on? Talk about schedule. Really, to me, it's again the Milroe show. How chaotic can he be and screw up defenses like he did since he's first stepped in 2 years ago now against Arkansas. So that's to me it's the Milroe show. Let's see what happens with it. Blake, guys, anything before we talk schedule?
Good to go.
All right. So let's look at this 2024 schedule because it's not easy, but I think it sets up decently. Blake, you want to talk about it first, and now we can roll in on it?
Yeah, I've got 3 games that worry me as a Bama fan, and that's obviously the 4th game of the season we're at home versus Georgia, and on the road in Knoxville worries me. But it's not so much those 2 games as it is the game right after Tennessee. I think the Missouri game is a very difficult game. We have them at home, but I think Missouri is a lot tougher than what a lot of people do expect them to be good. But I just think coming off of the Tennessee game, I think they're going to be a tough team in the East.
Yeah, I agree. Trevor, what do you think about this schedule?
I mean, I think it sets up pretty decently for Alabama. I mean, their non-com is harder than some of their conference schedule. I mean, as far as like with Vanderbilt and South Carolina in there, some might say even Auburn. I know they're trying to be revamped, but they're whatever. We'll talk about them here in a minute. But but I mean, USF, I feel like is kind of a dangerous game. And then at Wisconsin, while I don't necessarily think that Wisconsin will win, although I do feel like they're going to test the theory on DeBoer's offense. I feel like the Wisconsin game is going to test the theory that if you slow the game down and if you do ground and pound, you can basically take the game away from Kalen DeBoer's offense, which is kind of what Michigan did in the Natty to Washington. And I don't expect that to be the case, that they're going to be running the same spread, throw it all over the field. But if they try and do that, I think Wisconsin is built to shut it down, essentially. And I think that they can slow them down enough to make it put more stress on a team that's still trying to find their legs into the 3rd game of the season.
Yeah, I'm really interested about that Wisconsin game because it's year 2 under Fickle, and he's got more of the players that he wants in. We talked about them. I think they're going to be a dangerous team in the Big Ten. Not necessarily going to win the conference, type team, but I think that's definitely a game Bama needs to watch out for. And they should already have that circled. They said USF, got to watch out for them. They're a good team in the group of 5. South Carolina is always a sneaky one. But yeah, the Tennessee game at Tennessee, and then like you said, Blake, Missouri right after. You do get a bye week, luckily, before you have to go down and play LSU, which is looking like a solid team. We're going to talk about them later. But then, of course, the Oklahoma game. I don't know too much, what I think about Oklahoma yet. My jury's still a little out on them. But the Auburn one always last year came down to last second play. So, I mean, Auburn's going to be a little bit revamped. We'll see what they do. But it's not an easy schedule for Alabama. But I could see them still running it with the talent that they have. I don't know, Blake, any final thoughts on that before we move on?
No, I agree with everything else said.
It's going to be interesting. This SEC schedule is tough, man. So especially you add in Texas, add in Oklahoma, and then like you said, some of these out of conference games are pretty fun to see too. Let's go ahead and move on from Alabama. Like I said, these aren't projections. We're not doing records in anything yet. We're just kind of giving overviews of the team, what we see, if we like what they're doing or not. Next one up, we're doing Arkansas, and Arkansas last season 4-8. It went very bad in the middle. We all thought they were going to beat BYU. It was looking that way. BYU had a comeback, and then they got beat multiple times. But I'll say not all of them were huge losses. They were one-score losses. So I feel that there's some hope for Arkansas going into 2024. Things can be fixed. I guess, Trevor, let's talk about any changes that they've made going into this season after such a bad year.
Yeah, and the optimism is ironically not surrounded by any of the players that they brought in, but the optimism is that they brought back good old Bobby Petrino to run the offense as an offensive coordinator. It's I guess a bold move by Sam Pittman, mainly because this kind of allows Bobby Petrino to kind of stay there, sit there, and if something doesn't go right, potentially be the next head coach in waiting. So I'm just speculating. I'm just saying, like, it doesn't. Bobby Petrino, he's a head coach, really. I mean, when he was Louisville days, like they were rolling, and then when he went to Arkansas, all that drama that happened. I don't know if any of you remember, since it was back in 2012. God, I can't believe it's been that long ago since this happened. But yeah. So if anyone doesn't know, Bobby Petrino, even though he's coming in as an offensive coordinator, was at one time Arkansas's head coach, way back in the day, ironically enough.
Full
but yeah,
circle.
that's really the main big change, and why there is some optimism with this team.
Yeah, I mean, look, we were kind of hoping that Texas A&M would have that with him. Say maybe he'll spark this team, but it turned out, he even said it. Bobby did. He's like, yeah, he didn't even let me, call the plays. I couldn't understand like his lingo, any of that stuff. So that's why Jimbo is also gone. But I'm curious to see what he does in Arkansas. And we'll talk portal real quick for him, because they had a solid class, 26 overall class. They brought in 22 and they lost 30. So it's not a bad exchange on numbers there. And you look at a lot of the ones that they lost, some are to power forward guys, but others go in the FCS ranks, JUCO ranks. So, I mean, depends on, what you want to call a loss. When I wrote the biggest one, in my opinion, and probably most people's, is Taylor Green. That should be your quarterback after losing, former quarterback, and who's now at UCF. And now I'd say Xavier Ansori is probably the other one on the other side of the ball. Huge to plug in on the defensive side of the ball. That's what you need. You need that linebacker core to help out. You've got to get stronger in the run defense, and I think he'll do that. Jaquindon Jackson, Addison Nichols, guys like that, to me, are key ins, key out. All the running backs. You guys lost a lot of running backs. Cornerbacks, Johnson and Johnson is what I call them. Lorando Johnson and then RJ Johnson, two losses. Not necessarily saying they're big time players or whatever, but look who they go to and his depth. That as well. KJ Jefferson, obviously that sucks losing him, but like I said, they found his replacement. Chris Paul Jr. is another one that's coming in, or that's left. That one sucks. He went to Ole Miss. That hurts. So Trevor, guys, anything you're seeing on this team, offense, defense? Why are they hopeful for this year? Going into 2024.
Yeah, I mean, they did better than most, I feel like, in the recruiting and transfer portal. Although, I mean, they've got a nice young quarterback coming out of Alabama in KJ Jackson. I really like him. The D lineman Charlie Collins, coming out of Little Rock, Arkansas, top 65 player in the nation at D lineman, 6'4", 265, could see some rotational time. And I think that they're starting to build something, I feel like, at Arkansas. It's just Arkansas is one of those teams, guys. It just feels like they can never put it all together. They either might have this like fairly decent offense, but the defense just can't stop nobody, or vice versa. The offense can't really move the ball, but the defense is playing out of their minds. It's just never all together. And I feel like once they can do that, I feel like there's a chance for them to make noise in the SEC.
Yeah, last year, the KJ Jefferson just did not impress me. I thought he was really gonna like help take them to the next level.
Yep.
But I just can never figure out if it was poor offensive line play or if it was just bad quarterback play or a mixture of both. But going forward, I really like Taylon Green coming in. I think it's going to help spice the offense up, especially under Bobby Petrino. Brendan, the two players you named, Xavier and Sori, I think he's going to help tremendously on the defensive side of the ball. But they've got to have consistency on offense. They've got to – the ground game has got to help with the passing game. Defensively, they've just got to get to the quarterback. I do think they've got Brad Spence and Jalen Braxton coming back. Having that experience, they're built to do something. I don't know how far they'll go in the SEC under a new coordinator on the offense, but it can only go up. I mean, after last year's offense was awful.
Yeah, and not to backtrack, I just had to say Alabama's over-under was 9.5. When we talked about Arkansas's, it's 4.5. All right, we'll talk about the schedule here in a second, but when you look at these portal players and people coming in from the recruiting classes, you're looking at offense and the problems that were from the O-line, like Blake mentioned, that can get in a quarterback's head. You go out and they went in the portal, they got a bunch of guys, offensive linemen, trying to reshore that thing up. Addison Nichols from Tennessee. You're getting guys like Joe Moore coming in from Syracuse. You're trying to find help, somehow to get this thing going, especially for a new quarterback. And then you go out and you get a really good running back coming in Jaquindon Jackson from Utah. So that's like you've got pieces. And last year, like they had the 104th offense last year and the 46th defense. Yeah, I know it's not advanced stats. It's overall, it's kind of, not the greatest line to look at, but it shows some sort of picture. And to me, if you can just bring that offense down into the 60 range, get that mid-range, you're going to start knocking teams off that people don't expect you to, and you probably win 7 games, 8 games. So that's what I want to see from them. Get that offensive line rolling, and then defense, like you said, after losing your top tacklers to the portal, I think that's huge. And then defensive backs, I want to see how they hold up. Boys, you want to talk schedule?
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, it's not easy. All right.
No.
And it starts off, you get 1 week to kind of get your shit together before Oklahoma State, is on the docket. And after that, it doesn't get any easier, boys. Trev, you want to hit up on this schedule?
Ouch is all I gotta say. I mean, hey, positive note, you don't have to play Georgia or Alabama. But that being said, you get to play Ole Miss, Texas, Missouri, LSU, fun ones. Tennessee, they might be okay. But honestly, guys, I think I would take the over on this on Arkansas right now. I think I have to take the over on them because I actually think that they might actually beat Okie State. I just think that they'll have bigger bodies. I think they'll have faster athletes. Even though Okie State has the experience, I don't know. I have this feeling that they're going to walk out of the first 3 games undefeated and walk into conference play at Auburn as a 3-0 team. And then at that point, they just got to win 2 to be over. And, well, that's not an easy feat, but I think Mississippi State's a possible win. Auburn could be a possible win. And
Louisiana Tech down to the bottom. But
I'm looking at conference wins. I think they can beat Texas A&M too. But yeah.
Yeah,
I have some optimism for Arkansas. However, it hinges on a lot of things clicking for them.
Blake, what do you think?
that stretch from the end of September through Thanksgiving,
Yeah.
at Auburn. But what they have going for them is most of those big ones they do have at home. They got A&M at home. They got Tennessee, LSU, Ole Miss, and Texas all at home. That could help them out, especially if they've got an identity by then, and their offense is rolling.
Yeah.
I don't. It's really just a guessing game. We don't know how good they're going to be. Especially if they're starting a new quarterback. It's a new offensive scheme. That's a lot of changes. So,
Yeah.
I mean, the jury's out on them right now, but I mean, I do agree with Trevor. I think they could knock off some of these teams. I think they could beat Tennessee, A&M. I know you mentioned earlier you think LSU is going to be tough. I think LSU is going to drop off a little from last year.
Yeah.
I think that is a winnable game, and that is a big rivalry game between the two. So
Yeah, it is.
I don't know the last time Arkansas beat LSU. So
Yeah, I'm not sure. I had to look that
maybe
up.
this is an opportunity for them.
At least it's in Fayetteville.
Yeah, and like you said, it's where the games are played at that help. The Texas A&M game, that game's played up in Arlington, where you split the distance between the two.
Oh, that's
and
right. I forgot
so
about
that's a fun game though. It's not home field. It's not so it kind of takes that away a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's still that's a game that you need to go in there and be prepared if you're Texas A&M. I think this team has talent across the board to be dangerous in every game. Just like I said last year, a lot of one-score losses. If you're playing Arkansas, don't take them lightly. Be ready for them. If you're Ole Miss, you're already expecting to go playoffs this year. Look at what all you've done in the portal. Don't sleep on them. Texas, same for you. And you're welcome to the SEC. You got to be ready for it all. So it's tough. The 4.5, I see why it's rated there, but I could see them hitting an over. I could see them upsetting a team or two as well. Let's move on, boys, and jump into Auburn. If we got nothing else, right? Anybody? All right, let's move on. We got Auburn coming up. Okay, Auburn 2023. Look, it had moments of, okay, this team's going to do it. They're going to knock off Georgia. They're going to knock off Alabama. But then they still went 6-7. They lost to Maryland in the bowl game. So disappointing finish. But again, they're another one that feels that, we've got optimism going into this season. 2024 is going to be much better than what it was. And they have an over-under of 7.5. They returned 66% production. But last year they had the 90th offense and the 45th defense. So that defense, all right, keep it on that same track. You're going to be in every single game. Offense, got to get better. And that's what they're hoping from Hugh Freeze this year and year two. Trev, any changes from this Auburn side of the field that you're seeing?
Well, gosh, I mean, they did make some changes. They did bring in what's his name? The Ole Miss associate head coach, wide receivers coach, running backs coach, and Derek Nix. Soon after the season ended. That's I mean, obviously they brought in a few other coaches. Kent Austin comes in as a quarterback coach, and I don't know if it's going to help, guys. I mean,
I know.
Look, Auburn has a lot of hurdles to overcome this season. Obviously, they're breaking in a new offensive scheme with a new offensive coordinator. But Blake and I mentioned it in the off screen. They're just super young. They are super young just about everywhere that it is important to be kind of experienced. And yeah. But that's the main one is Nick's coming in as the new OC, and that's the biggest change. They do have a few position coaches as well, but that's the big one as far as the change goes.
Yeah, look, they got Peyton Thorne at quarterback, and he had moments at Michigan State where he looked good. He got injured, and then it's just never really been the same. I don't expect too much from him personally. But that's just misconceived. I don't know. But last year, they couldn't do anything offensively passing the football and in the biggest moments that they needed it. So they're hoping that this change can help him. Now you look at Portal before we talk too much more on the team. They did bring in a pretty solid Portal class, 28th overall. They brought in 15, they lost 23. And you're looking at guys like key in for me, Rico Walker, Dorian Mousey, Tro Carter, Antonio Kite, and Lambert Smith at wide receiver. Trying to get Thorne some options at wide receiver there. And also bringing in guys, across the board, offense, defense, from big name teams, Bama, Texas, Mississippi State, Cal. You're bringing in Rico Walker, like I said, a tight end option from Maryland. You're looking for weapons. You're looking for help for Peyton Thorne, because if you don't have that, this offense isn't going to move. Trevor, offensively, also on the recruiting side, they brought in a hell of a wide receiver. Who else were we looking at on that? Because, this guy, Cam Coleman, going to be a freaking monster.
Yes, he's going to be. Yes.
Everything that you've seen from him during the spring, that's another reason Auburn fans are super excited. They're like, this dude is, and they say he is him.
He's the truth.
Yeah, so they're really excited about that.
Man. But no, like they should be really excited. They do have a couple of really good wide receivers, and obviously Coleman, but Perry Thompson out of Foley, Alabama, a local in-state guy. 4-star, 97 rated, but he's still only a 4-star. 38th best player in the country, eighth best at his position. And we already know, we've already talked about it a little bit already on this show, is that this year's recruiting class has been super deep at the wide receiver position. So, like being the top 8 wide receiver in the country says actually quite a bit, in my opinion. And he's also another 6'3", 205 wide receiver to go along with Coleman, who's also a 6'3", 180 wide receiver. I think those two are going to complement each other very well. That is going to be an interesting thing, and to see how much playing time they get, if they get playing time. But goes back to them being more than likely young. But the one that I think that all Auburn fans should be excited about is Amaris Williams out of North Carolina, an edge rusher, 30th best player in the country, 5th best at the position, and he's 6'2", 257, but he's an edge rusher, and he jumps off the page as far as, and off the highlight reel as far as what he can do, even though he's only 6'2".
Yeah, they've got good pieces coming in. I would say a couple losses real quick before we talk more about the team that I wrote down as key outs. Cam Riley being one of them. Ashford, Osbury, and Sledge are guys that I mentioned or that I wrote down as, all right, these suck. These hurt to lose. Big D linemen, linebackers, that type of thing. But again, they brought in a lot of good players too. Blake, what do you think about this Auburn team? Going into this season, do you think they can make a jump?
I think this is where you will start seeing the Hugh Freeze era kind of take shape. The wide receivers that he's got coming in, you think back to his days at Ole Miss with Laquan Treadwell, AJ Brown. That's what Auburn's about to start getting. They're going to get those level wide receivers because that's what he does. That's what he goes after. And speaking of one more, I don't think I heard y'all mention him. His name is Robert Lewis, coming from Georgia State.
Yeah,
dude is a track star. He can absolutely fly. And, I hate Auburn with a passion, but, that's a positive thing for them. I'm going to try to say their name as little as possible. But, going back to last season, they had a very fast offense. They just didn't really produce. They moved quick. They just couldn't score. And I think a lot of that was quarterback play. I'm not impressed with Peyton Thorne at quarterback. He's not the long-term answer. I just think he's the best they've got available right now. I don't know how much better they get this year. I do think they can, it'll be better than last year, but I wouldn't say that I'm not ready to say that they're going to make like a drastic stride. But I think this is the year where you do start seeing like that Hugh Freeze team kind of come together. And I would say next year, maybe 2 years from now, they will be, in conversation for SEC championships. Definitely, you know, they'll be up there. I wouldn't say like Georgia, Alabama level, but you'll hear their name a lot more than you do now.
All right, yeah, I mean, he's obviously had a track record of building strong teams. You just got to give it time, I think. But I mean, they recruit really well. They're obviously getting players in the portal. You can't allow what happened last year, like the New Mexico State loss. Getting trounced by LSU. You can't allow that to happen. You got to stay right in every game. Let's talk, boys. Unless there's any changes here, maybe talk some schedule because this season is going to hinge on quarterback play. Defense, they've got talent. Like I said, that they brought in Isaiah Rakes, McLeod, Gage Keys, guys I'm looking for big seasons from. They got to step up. So let's see the schedule because I don't know. It's tough. Bottom line, it's tough, but there's moments there that they should be able to start gaining some traction. You guys want to hit off on that one? Obviously, starting off with Alabama A&M, that's a dub. Guys, take it from there.
Yeah, so we kind of covered it a little while back, but I think that in this particular case, the California game is a dangerous game for Auburn.
Mm-hmm.
California is much more improved. They are starting in themselves, and they're starting in a new conference. I think they're looking to make some splashes, and this would be a very early splash to give Auburn kind of an L this early in the season. Do I think it's likely? No. Do I think it's possible? Absolutely. I do think it's more likely that Auburn is able to squeak out with a win. I do not think it will be convincing.
Oh, look at last year's Cal game. Super close.
Yep. I don't think it would be convincing, and it would not shock me if Cal won. Lobos, I mean, I think that they're improved, but it's still New Mexico, and the level of talent is just so skewed towards Auburn's way. I feel like they'll just overpower them. And then we get into it, like, honestly, man, Auburn, your September's rough. I'm just going to say it. Like, you have Arkansas, that's nice, but then you go Oklahoma, Georgia, and then your first game in October is at Missouri, at Georgia, and at Missouri. Like, I mean, I know you get like a little bit of a break in between there. However, that little stretch of 3 right there is pretty darn tough, if you ask me. And I lean towards their 0-3 in those 3 games.
Yeah, Blake, what do you think?
They benefit their first 5 games all being at home. So that gives them somewhat of an opportunity to kind of, form their identity for the season. And, usually you can go into a season and kind of tell what a team is going to be. But with the transfer portal, every year you're basically trying to find a new identity because you're plugging and playing in various positions. Yeah. But one thing that sucks for them is, I mean, their 3 biggest games are all on the road. At Georgia, at Missouri, at Alabama. I see 0-3 in those. And, then the Oklahoma game, A&M, even Kentucky. I think Kentucky's going to be tough.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's going to be a tough drive to get to the, what was it, 7 wins? Is that their –
Yeah, they're over under 7.5. My bad.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to be right there. I mean, it's going to be like they're going to need one, I think, to make that.
I mean, I think it's potential to have 8 wins, but they're gonna have to work for it. They're gonna have to work for it for sure.
And like this team is, I think they're a good team. They've got a strong offensive line. They've got weapons. It just depends on Peyton Thorne and what he can do this season. And like I said, defense, just keep doing what you're doing last year, and you're going to be in every single one of these games. Will you win? Not sure, but at least you're going to be competitive. Get that ball running. Help out Peyton Thorne. Take some pressure off him, and this could be a solid year. Maybe hitting the over, but you got to be on all cylinders this season because it's tough. Just alone the last 2 games back to back. That sucks, man. That's tough. But trusting Hugh Freeze, I think he's building something nice there. Hey, guys, anything else on Auburn or these teams that we talked about tonight before we wrap it up?
I'm good.
No, not really. Not really.
Yeah, I look, the SEC's tough. We all know that. It's only gotten harder, with adding Texas, adding Oklahoma. But there's moments here for teams like Auburn, teams like Arkansas to make a name for themselves and to step up. So that's what we want to see this year, how it shakes out. Remember, these are just previews of the teams. These are not projections. We're going to do that here down the line as we near the start of the season, which is under 50 days away, what I'm tracking. So we're all excited for it. Guys, again, we thank you. We appreciate you for tuning in with us and watching the show. And just make sure you share, you comment, all that good stuff. Subscribe, of course. That helps us out immensely. So we appreciate you. We hope you tune in for the next episode. We're doing more of the previews rolling on. Y'all have a great night.
Later.